Enjoy the ride with Crystal Petrie, consulted, so inspiring.
Hello, I'm Crystal Petrie, and welcome to another episode of 60 Minutes With. On this week's episode, I am so excited about this podcast. We are going to talk about history and art and sports and everything that makes us great. At least I feel like. And everything that makes you great as well. We are going to learn about it. And here to educate us on all things, art and sports and music and theater, is Dana Howard. How are you?
Hi, I'm great.
Excellent. Okay, so we are in the Museum of the Gulf Coast located in Port Arthur, Texas. The museum is open. We have people walking around looking at the amazing things. So if you hear some background noise, that's what's going on. But Dana, let me remember to tell you, do not go anywhere because Dana is going to give me and you our own private, personal, educated tour of some special events and some special exhibits, I should say, here at the museum. So make sure you stick around for that. That's going to happen later on in the podcast. So Dana, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. This is the first time I've been on a podcast.
Oh, bucket list?
Absolutely.
Bucket list. Okay, so you are the education coordinator
Yes.
here at the Museum of the Gulf Coast. So the perfect person that I need to speak with. What is the Museum of the Gulf Coast?
Okay, well, it says on our website, we tell these, basically the museum tells the story of the Gulf Coast area. It's the sort of this weird little area, this part of Texas and southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana that are sort of, the same. We're like the same little ecosystem, and it's just our own little area. And we sort of tell the history of that. We talk about this. We talk about the culture of this place. Everything that makes this area, this specific area, because this little corner is just different than everywhere else.
Excellent. And behind us is a beautifully hand-painted mural. I tried to get as much of it in the video as I possibly could. So tell us just briefly about what this is behind us.
Okay, well, the mural is, it's 125 feet long. It goes from one side of the, like any good mural should, it goes from one side of the wall to the other. And it's one of the largest ones in the southwest, so southwest. It's one of the largest ones in the south. But it was hand painted by an artist named Travis Keys, and he had an assistant, and her name escapes me at the moment. But they painted this when they were building the museum in 1993, 94. And funny story, one of the art professors at Lamar Port Arthur down the road, he brings his art classes here for tours every semester. And I was talking to him the other day, and he had mentioned that he knew Travis, the artist who made this, and he said that his assistant had to have been the one who painted the people, because Travis couldn't paint people. Travis was great. He said Travis Keys was excellent at painting landscapes and animals, but he was terrible at painting people. So,
okay.
So I don't know, that's just a story from a friend. So I'm not sure how true that was, but I thought it was a cute little anecdote.
Okay, so you stated that the museum came about in 1993, 94-ish?
Yes, it was officially opened in 1994, but the Port Arthur Historical Society, that's the parent organization, they were founded in 1964. And so this is the 60th and 30th anniversary of both the Historical Society and the museum. But yes, the Historical Society created and opened the museum in 1994.
So why did the Historical Society feel the need to open this museum?
Well, back in the 60s, the current president of the Historical Society, Dr. Sam Monroe, He was working at the radio station, the Port Arthur radio station. That is, the little letters escape me, but he was head of that radio station, and then he later worked at Lamar Port Arthur, and the Historical Society had sort of collected some small pieces, Janus related, other rock and roll pieces, the Big Bopper, a few little historical, pieces from these musicians that were from this area. And they had built a small exhibit that was in the Gates Memorial Library. And eventually this exhibit started overflowing its space, and they realized that there was a need for a bigger place. And instead of just being a memorabilia museum, they decided to include the history of the area, the natural history. We've got paleontology, we have archaeology, everything all the way through, and even an exhibit dedicated to the beginning of the petrochemical industry, because what is the Gulf Coast region without the petrochemical industry?
It's true.
Yeah, so
it's true.
They decided that they needed a museum for everything, history and culture, all in one.
There are a lot of pieces in this museum of sports, musicians. Why is that?
Like I had said before, it had started as a collection of memorabilia, and while they were coming up with the concept of the museum, they decided that it needed to be more than just a collection of memorabilia. It needed to be, an honor. So they created what we call the Halls of Fame. We have the Sports Hall of Fame, the Music Hall of Fame, and one we call the Notable People Hall of Fame. And that's basically everybody who isn't a musician or an athlete. And but all of those people, they have ties to this area. They grew up here. They were born here. They went to school here. It's not like their grandpa lived here. We're not. They had to have had some impact on this area, or this area had some impact on their lives. And they went on to be extremely successful in their fields, and we celebrate that.
For people who want to come to this museum and be educated about sports and musicians and history, it's amazing history here. Where are you located?
We are located at 700 Proctor Street in downtown Port Arthur. It's really easy to find. You come straight down, you get on Highway 69, turns into Memorial, and when you can't go anymore, it's going to take you down the curvy Lakeshore Drive, and you'll find the back of our parking lot. If you see the police station, you've gone too far.
Just a little bit too far. Just a little bit.
We're right next door to the police station, but it's a big building. On one side it says we've got Museum of the Gulf Coast, and then our parking lot with our big banner. You'll find us. It's easy.
Why should people come to this museum?
Why shouldn't they? You should, in my opinion. I like learning. That's what I do. I'm one of those people, when I go on vacation, I work in a museum, but when I go on vacation, I go to museums because I like learning. I want to know the history of the area that I'm visiting, or the culture of the area, or if there's artists who, if they've had fantastic artists from this area. That's why I love New Orleans. New Orleans has so many museums that are related to the culture, and that's what this museum tries to be, and that's what I hope other museums try to be, because you want to learn about the culture, and if you live here, then you definitely want to learn about the history and the culture and everything of the place where you live. It surprises me every day that we have people who come in who have grown up here their entire lives and they've never been to this museum. And I love being able to, share this with those people.
Mm-hmm. So this next question is a two-part question. Mm-hmm. This is my question. What is the importance of museums for students, kids, but also what is the importance of museums for adults?
It's kind of a double answer here. Well, it's a double question, but some of the answers are the same for both, but it's really, kids learn in lots of different ways. You know, kids are stuck in classrooms all day, and at some point, they need to experience something different. If children come here as a school group, they get to experience learning with their peers in a different way, and they get to see something fun outside of the classroom, and there are so many benefits. But if children come with their families, if they're with their parents, then you have a whole different interaction with your family, because you're not at home, and it's not mom trying to teach you something at home or dad trying to, hey, do your homework. Hey, we're learning something cool as a family, and it helps increase that family bond and that family communication. I mean, it seems like it would. I mean, how is that supposed to work? But it really does, because it introduces questions and things for families. And then if you're an adult and you're just coming to a museum, the reason I go to museums and how museums benefit me is not only what I said earlier about learning things, but it's usually quiet, you know, unless it's like one of those big, huge museums, like the big Natural History Museum, or, you know, the big ones in the big cities. You know, it's usually fairly quiet, so you can kind of walk around and do your own thing at peace and read things that are interesting to you, and it's, you know, it's sort of a little bit self-care, even a little bit, because you're taking time for yourself to do something to make yourself better, you know, and you may learn something, you might enjoy it, you know.
How would you say museums capture the history to show us the effect during the future?
That's an interesting question. It's, I know it sounds cliche, but you have to know history in order to not repeat the mistakes in the past. And just like this guy right here, I'm sort of glad this is where you picked to pick up, because this particular story, this is Cabeza de Vaca, and he was one of the Spanish explorers who, in the 1500s, he was looking for the Fountain of Youth in Florida. He kind of missed his mark and ended up here in Texas. But to make a long story short, they were captured by natives when they crash landed here, somewhere between here and Galveston. We're not exactly sure. But there's a long story of how he got back to Spain. But it involved this man, Esteban, his slave, next to him. And Esteban was a slave. But we know his name.
That's amazing.
Yes, and we know his name because Cabeza de Vaca wrote about him in his book.
Wow.
And this gives us the opportunity to tell the story. Yeah, he was a slave, but he was educated. He could read, he could write, he knew several languages, he could learn languages very quickly, and he is the reason that Cabeza de Vaca was able to escape the natives that captured him. So it's important that I'm able to tell this man's story now. So that's why museums like this are so important, because you get to do things like this. You get to tell the stories that you don't read about in school.
Yes. Oh my God. I love it. I'm trying to remain professional and ask my questions, but I'm just enjoying this so much. Okay, so Dana, what is your personal intention in the space and educating within museums?
Okay, I'm one of those kids who never really grew up. I'm older than I look, but I've always been interested in everything. Like, I mean, I have ADHD. I have varying interests. So I never could decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But I spent several years in education before, like at schools. I was working in high schools and middle schools, and it wasn't, I knew it was something that I wanted to do, but it wasn't the right fit. So I had to find where that fit was, and when this position became available, it seemed like the perfect fit, because I still get to be in that education world, but I get to do it in my own way, and I get to do it with different children every day. I don't see, it's not always my one classroom, which is great for teachers, but I get to teach all of the kids. I get to teach all of the kids just a little bit, and that brings me a lot of joy.
Now, just as promised at the beginning of the podcast, we are going on a personal private tour that Dana is going to give us of some specific permanent exhibits here at the museum. So you get your first look at them, but once you look at it on the podcast, come and visit the museum in person. So we're headed out now.
Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is our Janis Joplin exhibit. Janis Joplin, if you haven't heard her name, then you should probably look her up because she's one of rock and roll and blues great female artists. But she was born and grew up right here in Port Arthur, Texas, and she, before she went off to San Diego, San Francisco, this is where she grew up. She went to high school here, and we have a little corner of our museum dedicated specifically to her. She did have a very famous car it was a Porsche that was painted by an artist, and we had this isn't the actual one. We had an artist, a very good artist, who was able to replicate the art that was on her original car because it's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think. So that's where the real one is. But you can see this. We've also got a lot of all these art pieces up on the wall behind the car. Those were all done by Janis Joplin herself. She was also a pretty good artist in addition to a fabulous songwriter and singer and everything. So we have this exhibit and so many more here in our music hall. So this piece right here, this is an interesting piece. If you've seen or heard any Zydeco music, you know that sound that you hear in the Zydeco music. They play it on an instrument that looks like this. Before this was invented, it was an actual washboard that they used to do laundry on. You know, the old timey it was made out of wood and had a little corrugated piece of metal that you would scrub your clothes on. And that's what the Zydeco musicians would use to make that sound. Well, Clifton Chenier, he's one of our Hall of Famers here. He's the king of Zydeco. That's what they call him. And he was born and raised right here in Port Arthur. He worked in Port Arthur Refinery, and in the evenings he would play Zydeco. Him and his brother had a band, and they would play Zydeco in different clubs around in the area. And his brother played the rubboard. But he had an actual rubboard. It was a piece of wood with the corrugated, and it hung around his neck. They had a rope, and it would leave rope burns on his neck by the end of the performance. And Clifton, being the nice brother that he was, he hated how uncomfortable his brother was at the end of every show. And he had an idea, a way to make this instrument more comfortable for his brother to play, and it was this right here. He, like I said, he worked at Port Arthur Refinery, and he went to one of his buddies in the machine shop and said, "Hey, I have an idea, but I need your help. If I draw something, do you think you can build it for me?" And the guy in the machine said, yeah, of course I can build anything. So Clifton here picks up a stick and draws this in the dirt. I've heard of brilliant ideas being written on cocktail napkins. This was the first one I've ever heard of that was drawn in the dirt. But the machine shop guy, he looked at it and said, "Yeah, I can make that." He made one up. It was perfect. Clifton's brother was very much more comfortable and happy, and so much so that other Zydeco bands in the area would see and say, "Hey, where'd you get that? Hey, where'd you get that? Hey, where'd you get that?" And eventually, the machinist who made the original one was getting so many orders and so many requests to make more that he quit his job at the refinery and opened his own shop, which his son still runs today. It's called Key of Z Rub Boards, and it's just over the border in Louisiana. And but that's not the most interesting thing. The Smithsonian Institute of Music certified this specific instrument, the rubboard. It has a French name that I will pronounce incorrectly, so I'm not going to say it. But this particular instrument, it is certified as being the only instrument in the entire world with its roots entirely in the United States. Most other musical instruments are, all other musical instruments, in fact, are invented, were from other countries. Drums came from Africa, guitars came from Spain, pianos came from Italy, brass instruments came from Europe, and so on. This is the only instrument in the world that was conceived and invented and created entirely in the United States. So this is our Sports Hall of Fame, and probably the best known person here in our Sports Hall of Fame is Jimmy Johnson. If you're a Cowboys fan, you know this name very well. But he, born and raised right here in Port Arthur, graduated from TJ High School before he went to college. And college is where he met Jerry Jones, and the rest is history. But you know, and if you live here, you know that he's got a street named after him. So we're very proud of our the Port Arthur Sun here. But he just recently was entered into. He was class of 2020 Hall of Famer for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's been in our Hall of Fame for a long time. But something that not a lot of people know about Jimmy Johnson, he is the only coach ever to win a collegiate national championship when he was in Miami, and coach of Miami, and a Super Bowl championship when he coached the Dallas Cowboys. So he's won both a collegiate championship and he won a collegiate championship as a student, because when he was on the Arkansas Razorbacks, he was on the championship team. They won the national championships that year. So he won collegiate championship as a student, as a coach, and as a pro coach. So he's kind of a big deal. So this is something that is fairly new to our museum. It's only been here for a few years. We have these in our Notable People Hall of Fame. We have some touchscreens in our Music Hall of Fame and in our Sports Hall of Fame as well. But I wanted to just show you a little bit about how it works. I'm just going to show you one of the Gulf Coast children here. Now, the Notable People, I want to explain what that is before I keep going. Basically, these are just people who have done something important. They've come here, they had their family ties here in whatever way it was. They grew up here, went to school here, and so forth. But they went on to do something in their fields and become very successful nationally, internationally. We've got astronauts, actors, teachers. We have a teacher, businessmen, soldiers. We have a Medal of Honor winner. But the person I want to show you today, you may not be familiar with. You may not know his name, but you definitely know his work. And if you have children, you definitely know his work. He was born and raised in Beaumont, and he went to Lamar University, and then went on to California to further his education in his chosen field, which was animation. This is Kelly Asbury. He was an animator and a director. He passed away just a couple of years ago, unfortunately. But he had a big role in all of your favorite movies. He was an animator on Beauty and the Beast. He worked on Spirit, which was a pretty good movie. One of my favorites, he was an animator for Romeo and Juliet, which tells if you're not familiar, it tells the story of Romeo and Juliet from the perspective of garden gnomes, and it is the cutest movie I've ever seen. Toy Story, he worked on the Toy Stories, he worked on Shrek, he worked on Nightmare Before Christmas. But if you are local and you went to Lamar University and you've seen Shrek 2, here's a little fun fact. Go back and watch it and look at Lord Farquaad's castle, and then go visit Lamar University campus and look at the library. Because when Kelly Asbury was animating for Shrek 2, he designed Lord Farquaad's castle to look just like the library on the Lamar campus. And it's a great little tie-in that his little homage to home. Now, something else I'm going to show you about our touchscreens here. Not only can you interact with things here on on the pages here, but we have, with most of our people, we have some videos of them too. So you can watch videos of the people that we have in here, maybe clips of their movies or interviews with them and so forth. So when you do visit here, make sure you take advantage of this because it is a huge asset and it helps you learn more about the people that we have in our different exhibit spaces. So this is an exhibit that you are probably not going to see anywhere else in the entire world. This is an actual Academy Award, and under the rules of the Academy, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is the full name, I think, but under their specific rules, when an Academy Award winner passes away without an heir to hand down their Oscar statue to, it goes back to the Academy. So why do we have one? Because another one of the rules is that the statues are only supposed to be displayed in the winner's personal areas, home, office, etc., not in a museum. So why do we have one? It's a fun story. But first I'm going to tell you about the lady who won the Oscar. Her name was Leah Rhodes, and she was a costume designer. She was born and raised right here in Port Arthur, and she got her start as a window dresser. She would decorate the store windows out here on Proctor Street, all of the different, the stores. She would decorate the windows with their holiday displays or anything like that. And eventually, someone convinced her she was good at what she did and she needed to go be better at it, go do something bigger. So she ended up in Hollywood and she became a costume designer. She worked on several films, and in 1948 she was the head costume designer for a little movie called The Adventures of Don Juan, starring none other than Mr. Errol Flynn. And 1948 was about the time where color motion pictures were just starting to become a really big thing. Everything had been most everything was black and white up until then, and it was very rare to get a color picture. But they had enough color motion pictures that they felt it was unfair. The Academy did. The Academy felt it was unfair for the costume designers in black and white movies to compete against the costume designers in color pictures, because if you're going to watch a movie, you're going to vote for the costume with all the colors because it's much more exciting than the black and white. So for a few years, they had two separate categories for costume design in a color motion picture and in a black and white picture. And Miss Leah Rhodes won the very first Oscar for costume design in a color motion picture, and that's how she won the Oscar. Now, she did pass away without an heir, and the Oscar went back to the Academy. But to tell you the rest of the story about why we have this Academy Award, we have to talk to a lady on the other side. Okay, so in the early 90s, when they were preparing to build the museum and gathering things to put in the museum, Evelyn Keyes came down to visit. Evelyn Keyes, she played Scarlett O'Hara's sister in Gone with the Wind, and among other things, but that's probably her best known role. And she also was a powerful Hollywood woman. She wrote lots of books and she married lots of powerful men, and she became powerful in her own right. Basically, she was one of those women that in Hollywood that people did what she said. But she was born here in Port Arthur, and even though her mother moved her away to Georgia when she was 3 years old, she always considered Port Arthur home, and she visited frequently. She had family, friends here that she kept for life. And when they were getting ready to build the museum, she was here talking to the president of the Historical Society, and she said, "What can I help you with?" And she said, they asked, "Well, we really would like to display Leah Rhodes' Oscar." And she said, "Well, write me a letter, boys." And so they did, and I don't know if she even read the letter, but a few days later, she was back in Hollywood having lunch with the president of the Academy, and she handed him this letter and said, "Do what it says inside." And a couple of days after that, the president of the Historical Society got a phone call asking if we could insure the Oscar if they put it on permanent loan to us. So now that's the story of how we got the Leah Rhodes Oscar. Now, just a little bit more on Evelyn Keyes here. I mentioned that she loved Port Arthur and she always considered it home, and she really did love this museum. So much so that when she passed, she wanted to make sure that part of her always remained here in the museum. And we actually have a little bit of her ashes in this little genie lamp right here. So say hi, Evelyn.
We are back from the tour. I hope that you loved it and enjoyed it as much as I do. Now, back to some questions. What kind of educational programming does this museum, the Museum of the Gulf Coast, offer?
That's my favorite question because I get to talk about what I do. Okay, so my official title, there's only a few, there's 5 of us on staff here, so, and this is a very large museum, so we all wear many hats, and my main job is education and tours. So I'm the education and tour coordinator, which the tours sort of fall under that education umbrella anyway. But I also do some of the PR marketing, I do some of the, I had it in my mouth, I had it there just a second ago, but we all do a little bit of everything. Okay. But my main role is the education and the tours. The volunteers, that was the thing. Yes, I also help coordinate the volunteers, which is important. If you are bored, please contact us. We need volunteers. And if you don't live close enough to volunteer here, find a museum near you and go volunteer. That's important.
Okay, we love her. We love Dana. We love Dana. Continue.
Sorry. But yes, my role as education is really just to teach the people that come here. As tours, I would, if you need a tour of the museum, we do offer guided tours. We do a lot of tours for schools. At any school, that's another public service announcement, all school tours are free. We do not charge any school anywhere for tours.
So
here.
Even outside of Port Arthur,
Even
Texas.
outside of Port Arthur, yes. Every school, any school that wants to make their way down here gets a free
regardless
tour. Regardless of where they come, yes.
Wow.
Yep.
I guess I'm having a hard time. Wow, that's amazing.
Because that's one of the important things. One of the important things to us is education. We want children to know that just because you grew up in a small town, or maybe you're a poor kid in the other side of the tracks or whatever, that doesn't matter, because all of these people in this museum, some of those people started out just like you. So we want to make sure that every child has an opportunity, no matter where they come from. Every child in the area has an opportunity to come here for free. Yeah. Now everybody else has to pay because we do have to stay. We have to keep the lights on. But we are a nonprofit, so we try to give. That's how we give back to the community, because as a nonprofit, there's not much that's our way of giving back. And aside from that, we do that tours. I also offer tours for adults. We have lots of groups that come from all different areas. A lot of church groups, a lot of senior groups. They like to come here, and we do guided tours for them as well. And our guided tours, they're no extra charge, so it's just with the admission fee. It's just the admission fee, and we offer our docents for free as well, so there's no charge for that. Now, here's the part I like to talk about, the educational programming. In addition to the school tours that we offer, I do this thing that we call them discovery trunks, and they're just boxes of magical museum stuff that I take out into schools. And there's a small fee for that, but it's very reasonable. And but I get to bring pieces of things in the museum to schools and daycares, and I think I did a summer camp, like a day camp last year. I've done a Montessori school. It's fun. I have hands-on things that the children can interact with. I have 4 different boxes with different themes. I have an ocean-themed one for pre-K, and then an ocean So really I have 3 boxes, but but I have an ocean themed. I have one, my favorite one is called Animal Adaptations, and that one's all about how different animals survive in their environments and how they have adapted, and also brings in a little bit about how humans adapt to their environment too, so it sort of ties in a little bit. And but all of these, and then there's the other one is about the Native Americans that lived here, and I have a lot of history about them, but it's taught in a way that the younger children can relate to it. And we get to, and every one of those boxes comes with, we do a craft activity for all of the kids to take home. And it's a great little thing that I like to do because I get to go see the kids in their environment. So instead of them coming to my environment and they're, on a field trip and they're excited, they're in their environment. So they're a little more comfortable and they're more apt to respond to me because I'm in their place. I came to their house to talk to them, and they're not in my house trying to behave because the teachers are telling
and not touch anything.
Right. So it's a fun way for me to get the museum out to them if they can't come here, or it's just a way to focus a little bit more, and it makes it fun for the children. And then the kids get to go home and say, "Ooh, somebody from the museum came by," and they're like,
because
museum?
they forgot your name.
Right. and then can we go see the museum? Can we go see the museum?
Yes. It works too.
It does. It does.
It works.
And another one of the ones that we do, we actually just finished. By the time this airs, it'll be later. But just last weekend we had what we call our Family Fun Days, and that is. That's another way that we give back as a nonprofit organization. It's how we give back to the community. We have 4 times a year, and it's a free event. The museum, admission to the museum is free that day during the event, and I bring in all sorts of fun things for kids to do. Like this past one, we had, his name was Sonny Carlin, Sonny the Birdman. He was on America's Got Talent. He lives in Nederland, and he's got several exotic parrots, and they do these really cool tricks, and they're very, very cool. So he was one of our performers this time. The police, Port Arthur Police Department brought their SWAT truck out and let the kids climb out. Stable Spirit is a group in Vider. They bring their horses out. Sometimes they have therapy horses. We've had some therapy dogs come out for Christmas time. We always have a Santa. So it's an event that we've done, the museum has done for a long time. This is just something that I picked up when I started on,
right.
And I continued on. And it's a great event that has been going on for years. In fact, when my son was little, before I ever had dreamed of working here, I brought him to the Family Fun Days. And now my son is one of the volunteers here. He's a teen volunteer here. And that's another thing, as I keep forgetting, that's another part of my educational programming is our teen volunteers. I have a group we call the Teen Troop, and they they get volunteer hours, and for whatever club they're trying to get into, or college, whatever. I write great recommendation letters, but it also gets them out into the community and helps them do something more than what is required of them at school.
Yes. Yes.
They're doing something, and they usually like it. I had one. I got a note from a mom a couple of months ago talking about how her daughter had to write a paper about what she wanted, or what her favorite thing about the year was, or something. And it was, and her topic was how much she liked volunteering at the museum.
Wow.
And that made me feel like I'm doing something right.
Yes.
Because if a teenager is enjoying being here,
yes.
then
How do museums contribute to the communities financially?
Well, like I said before, we are a nonprofit,
Right.
so we don't put anything financially out into the community, but we do offer all of these free programming, like I said, and that is the way that we give back to the community, because like I said, we are a nonprofit, so we ask a lot of the community, but you can't ask if you don't give. And so
Right.
it's the way we try to balance out.
And I know with this museum specifically, people from all over come to this museum.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're spending their dollars here in Southeast Texas and in Port Arthur, Texas.
Oh, yes.
Because they're coming to this museum.
Absolutely, yes. That's a big part of any of the nonprofits down here is the tourism. We do rely on a lot of those tourism dollars because if they come here to see, say, Janis Joplin or Robert Rauschenberg, or we had someone a month ago come from the UK because they were part of a lighthouse association, and they came here specifically to see the lighthouse glass that we have from the Sabine Bank Lighthouse. So it's like it's the different things bring people to this specific museum from all over the world.
Yes.
So those tourism dollars are very important to us, and because people are coming here, you're exactly right. They are staying in local hotels. They're spending their money at local restaurants, and so I guess that would be a way we contribute financially too. It's sort of a tourism thing. Yeah, definitely.
Why are museums called a community's treasure?
Because we hold the treasures of the community. I mean, you would be surprised how many phone calls we get a day of my great-grandmother graduated from TJ High School in 1924, and I have a yearbook, and we'd like to donate it to the museum, and it's lovely little things like that. But it's all the time, somebody's always got something that that might be related here, or and another. It's not just us; it's a lot of museums because, and I think part of it is because people have these things that are from their, it's their it's something that their ancestors left to be their legacy, and they don't know what to do with it, and it's important. It's important to them, and it might have historical significance, so they call us, and a lot of times it does. And, that's how we got a lot of the things that we have in here, is because people found something in Grandma's attic and was like, this looks important, and it turns out it was. More than just important to the family, and that's how a lot of these things got to us.
So Dana Howard, you are the educational coordinator, amongst other things, here at the Museum of Gulf Coast in Port Arthur, Texas. What tips can you give people who are visiting the museum for them to enjoy it more, to take away from it more?
If you're going to visit this museum or any museum, a lot of them have volunteers, like our volunteers here at our front desk. They are, many of them are retired, and many of them grew up in this area, and many of them just like to talk about our museum. They love our museum, and they like to talk about it. So if you're lucky enough to go to a museum that has a volunteer like that who wants to tell you, listen to them, because they have stories. And they, and they can tell you little details. And like our volunteers, they hand you a map and they tell you, this is what's, go look here, this is how you get here, but hey, your little kids right there, they're probably going to like this exhibit in this spot. So if you're lucky enough to visit a place that has front desk volunteers like that, listen to them, because it's a great little, gem. And but as far as being around the museum, don't do what you think is expected of you. This is a museum. You can look at anything. You don't have to follow a certain path. Yes, the layout of our museum is chronological down here on the first floor, but you don't have to do it that way. If you want to look at Spanish missions and then look at the oil and then look at the dinosaurs, then do that, because you're here for yourself. You're here to learn something. You're not here to do what everybody expects you to do. So look at what you like. And if you see something and you're like, I'm not interested in that, you don't have to look at it.
Some people consider museums intimidating. Why do you feel that they consider them intimidating, and what can be done to get over that?
I think that intimidation comes from just not knowing what to expect, or thinking that it might be boring, or thinking that it's just over their heads or something like that. And it shouldn't be. So if you're in a museum and it is that way, then that's not a very well done museum, because the purpose of any museum is to educate the public and to inform the public and to entertain the public. And you can't do that if it's too smart.
Oh, yes.
So
yes.
Don't worry, don't feel intimidated that you're not going to understand it, because, especially not here, because our museum is designed in a way that everyone can understand. Even children, we have pictures, we have interactive things that children can touch, we have things to look at, everything's labeled, the stories are written out. It's very good. It's not going to make anybody uncomfortable because you're not smart enough to be here. So I think that's the intimidation factor, I think, and it's not anything to worry about.
What can someone do to extend their visit once they leave the museum?
That is fun. With our museum and a lot of museums, social media is a thing now, so make sure you follow the social media pages for your favorite museums, because they post, like we post all the birthdays of all the people in our halls of fame. We always post about them, or we post pictures of the different visitors that come to our museum. Like we had a family group here earlier this morning before you got here that was celebrating. The family had come in to celebrate graduation, so they were all here at the museum. And it's things like that. That will help you keep connected to the museum when you're not there. And then, just take time to go back. Because I've worked here for 2.5 years, no, 2 years, almost 2 years. And I've visited this museum several times before that. And there's still stuff in here that I don't know everything about. Like, my job is to know the museum, and I do, but then I'll go back and I'll see something and I'll read something. I'm like, oh, I didn't remember that. Or it's because there's always something new, even if it's not new, because you might not have seen it before. It's like watching a movie for the second or third time.
Because you always miss something.
Right.
Well, it seems like this has been a full circle life moment for you. You used to visit here, you brought your kid here, now you work here. What is that feeling like?
It's really kind of neat, because the first time I was here was in 1997 or 98 when I was in college at Lamar Port Arthur. So the museum had only been open for 3 or 4 years. And my English professor, one of our assignments was to come to the museum and pick an exhibit and then write a descriptive essay about an exhibit. And I came through, that was the first time I was through the museum, and I'm a museum person, so I was like, well, I'm gonna look at the museum. So I did, and I found the exhibit, I wrote my paper, and then I kept visiting. And then when I had my son, the family fun days had become a thing, and I was like, well, let's go do that. And he loved them, and then the job came. Yeah, it's just, sometimes things just work out that way.
Yes, it truly worked out for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Truly.
Absolutely.
How do
I'm
you
blessed.
feel about virtual museums?
It's sort of a double-edged sword, because the virtual museum, like a virtual museum tour, I think it's a great idea, because it allows people to see what's in a museum without being able to go there. Like, for example, I don't know if I'm ever going to make it to Paris to visit the Louvre. I don't know. I would love to, but I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, because that's a long way, it's in Paris.
Yes.
It's not a thing that everybody gets to do. But you can go virtually and you can see sort of what they have in there. And it's kind of, it sort of helps you connect with what they have in a place that you're not able to visit. And the problem with those is some people may be like, oh, well, I've seen the virtual tour, I don't want to go see it. But you can't take that attitude, because a virtual tour is not, yes, you're going to see everything that we have in the museum, but the virtual tour would be more like an invitation. Hey, look at what we have.
This is like the appetizer.
Right. Look at what we have. Like, these are all of the things we have. And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to tell you about all of the things in our virtual tour. But I'm telling you all of this so that you can come experience all of this in person. Because it's not the same. Even if I show you pictures, even if I tell you everything about each little piece, it's not the same. And you're not going to get the same experience. I think they are great, but I think they are not, I don't think that they should replace visiting a real museum.
That's excellent.
It should be an addition to.
Yes, that's excellent. That's excellent. So, in that same breath, does this museum have a virtual museum?
We do not.
Okay.
We do not. I don't know if that's anywhere in the plans. That's not part of my not part of my department. But
yes.
It's, you know, if we do, I'm sure that if we ever do decide to go that direction, I'm sure we would announce it on our website for sure.
Absolutely. What is your favorite piece? I guess it's sort of like, who's your favorite child? But
yeah.
What's your favorite piece here at the museum?
I have a lot. But my favorite piece to talk about would probably be the Leah Rhodes Oscar statue that we have, and along with Evelyn Keyes. That's my favorite thing to talk about, but my favorite piece to look at, and just the favorite thing in here that I just like to see is there's one of the lithographs in the Robert Rauschenberg Gallery that is just speaks to me every time I see it.
What's a lithograph?
A lithograph is a Robert Rauschenberg and Andy Warhol, those prints that they make. They make one piece, and then they make a limited run of a specific print, and it's not a copy, but it's a very specific way that they make the print, and it's they usually do a limited run, but it's the same sort of thing that Andy Warhol did. So the Campbell's soup cans and the Maryland.
Yes.
Yeah. So the lithographs. That's what. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was one of the many mediums that Robert Rauschenberg used in his art.
When people come to this museum, where do they start? Because is it 3 floors here?
It's 2 floors.
It's 2 floors?
Yeah, the third floor. We do have a third floor, but it's offices.
Okay. So 2 floors here. Where do they start?
Like I said, chronologically, like I said earlier, our first floor is laid out chronologically, and most people do start here on the bottom floor. And you'll learn on the bottom floor here. We have our natural history, back when dinosaurs were here in the Cretaceous period. There's a billboard that says from Jurassic to Joplin, and they only did that because Jurassic didn't Joplin. But it's actually our history starts in the Cretaceous period here in in this part of Texas. Our exhibits. But Cretaceous to Joplin just didn't work for the sign, you know.
I know.
But yeah, so you can start with the dinosaurs and go all the way to the oil and look at all of the Texas history and everything in between, and then go up to our second floor to our Halls of Fame. Or like I said, you could start anywhere, really. Sometimes we also have a rotating art gallery, not art galleries, not always art, but we have a rotating gallery that our curator brings in different exhibits 3 or 4 times a year. Some people start there, depending on what we have in the hall at the time. So there's a lot of different ways to start, but most people start with the chronological.
Is there anything that people should do or should know before coming to a museum, or do they just come and show up?
Well, I mean, you can just come and show up, but just like any new place, I would always just check the website and make sure you know what the entry fee is, how, maybe how big it is. Some people don't realize how big we are, and they think that they can stop here for 30 minutes and see everything.
No.
So, maybe check on something. Make sure it's not a big, huge museum and it's going to take you 2 hours. So do your research before you go to a museum. Give them a call. Hey, how long does it take to walk through there? How much does it cost? That sort of thing. That would be the most important thing, I would say. Just like you would do your research for any tourism attraction.
Absolutely. Well, we're getting ready to wrap up this interview, but Dana, thank you so much for sitting down. Thank you for the tour of the specific pieces. This has been so much fun for me, really, because I love museums and I am a lover of history. So I feel like if I wasn't doing this, I would be like a history professor somewhere because I love it. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Dana's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.
Come on, let's go on a journey. Sit back, buckle up, enjoy the ride.